No hard questions.
I don't have time for anything today. Ready? Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry, I know people are still grabbing coffee, but I'm going to try to finish for people who want to daven at 9 o'clock, and it's a long daf. So the Mishnah, where today's daf is Kufnun Daled 154, but we're going to just review what we said in the Mishnah on Kufnun Gimel. The question of if you had a star that is not clear whether the person was a shchid meira, whether he was on death's door, and he says, and now he's healthy. He says the gift that I gave you was the gift of a shchid meira. We know that if a shchid meira gives a gift, and then subsequently he is healed from his illness, that he gets the gift back. So he says, I get the property back. The recipients. This is a shtar. The recipients of the shtar say, no, you gave it to us as an absolute gift. That wasn't a shchid meira gift, and therefore, even though you got better, you can't take it back. And so the way so that was the case. And the Gemara says, Sarach lahabi raya sheshchid meira hayad devar Rabbi Meir. We say that Rabbi Meir says that the person to bring a proof that he was sick. If he wants to take back the gift on the basis that it was a matna shchid meira, that he gave the gift on the basis of the fact that he was dying, he has to prove that in fact he was sick, because normally a shtar would say it. Here it didn't, so he has to prove his point. But Chachamim say no. The ones who are written in the shtar to get the gift, they're trying to take this gift from the person, and therefore that he needs to bring the person who was the recipient in the shtar needs to bring a proof that in fact the person was healthy when he said it. And absent that, we're going to keep the property in the hands of the person whose it was, which is the person who got sick. Okay, so we're going to pick up the Gemara. It really just quotes the Mishnah on Kufn and Gimel on Beis, the second to bottom line. So there's a machlokes Rabbi Meir and the Chacham that we just said. Rabbi Meir holds that Rabbi Meir holds that the guy needs to prove he was sick, and the Chacham would say no. If they want to take the property from him, they need to prove that he was well. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to understand Raya b'mai. When we're talking about, and the Rashbam points out, this is whether you hold like the Rabbanan or like Rabbi Meir. You're saying one side or the other needs to bring a proof. What is the nature of that proof? So Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna says, Raya be'edim. The Raya is with Edim. We'll explain this in a minute. Rav Chisda v'Rabba bar Rav Huna Amri, Raya be'kim ashtar. Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna say no, that the proof that they need to bring kayem the shtar. And we'll see as we go through the Gemara what those two things mean. So now we'll go over. Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna says, Raya be'edim kamiflgi, that they argue, Raya be'edim, that when it says they need to bring a proof, it's talking about bringing witnesses to support their view. Look to the Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Nassan, and in fact, they're arguing about, in the same argument as Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Nassan, which we dealt with yesterday, but I'm going to read a little further and then we'll explain it. Siman me'niach. So me'niach is because we're saying that Siman Meiniach shows us the connection. That's just a reminder of memory. Reb Meir Kreb Nasan, that's the Mem and Nun of Meiniach, the Rabbi Meir Nasan, and Rabbanan Rabbi Yaakov, and and Rabbi Yaakov, the Yud and the Ches is really a Chaf for the the Ches is for Chachamim. Rabbanan Rabbi Yaakov, that the Rabbanan hold like Rabbi Yaakov. So what's going on here? So the way Rav Huna is learning, he's saying it's a Raya be'edim, means as follows. So we have a machlokes and this is the basic way we understood it, which is Rav Meir said the guy needs to prove he was sick. So how does he prove he was sick? By bringing edim that he was deathly ill, and the Chachamim say that the recipient needs to prove that he was well. So they need to bring edim to prove that he was well. So this is how we would have understood the machlokas in its basic sense. What are they really arguing about? They're arguing about the same thing we discussed yesterday, as Rabbi Nassan, and which is machlokas Rabbi Nassan and Rabbi Yaakov. So Rabbi Nassan and Rabbi Yaakov argue as follows about which chazaka we look at here. So Rabbi Nassan held that we look at the chazaka dahashta. The chazaka dahashta tells us that we look at what is the circumstance as it exists right now. Hashta means now. What's the circumstance as it exists right now? And we're going to assume backwards that was the condition at the time that's under inquiry. So yesterday we talked about the fact that someone who died, and we were trying to figure out had he gotten better after he made the matna shchimera. And we said, according to Rav Nassan, since he's dead now, and so he's in a bad shape situation, so we're going to assume that he was deathly ill at the time he made it. So we look at the current status, which is someone who got sick and died. So we're going to look back and say it must have been he was sick. That's Rabbi Nassan. So how would that apply in this case? In this case, remember, it's the opposite. The guy made a gift, and now he's doing better. So he's on his feet now. So if he's on his feet now, he's in the chazaka dahashta would say that since he's in a healthy position now, he was in a healthy position at the time of inquiry, which is at the time he gave the gift, and therefore we're going to say that he needs to bring a raya that he was sick, because the chazaka needs to bring Aiden that he was sick, because the chazaka says he wasn't sick, because just like he's healthy now, he was healthy when he gave the gift. That is how we understand Rav Nassan going like Rav Meir, who say that the person, the recipient of the gift, who wants to take it from the guy, has to prove that he was well. Why? Because he holds like Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov says we look back not at him but at the property. The property wasn't his reshus, right? And now you're trying to take it away from him. Because we're going to look back at the chazaka that he's muhsuk in his property. He has a chazaka that he's the owner of the property. Okay, so that's the machlokas. That's the basic way to understand the machlokas, which is how we would have read the Mishnah. And now the Gemara is pointing out that this is dependent on that same machlokas of Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Nassan that we dealt with yesterday. But here's the second view. Rav Chisda and Rav Huna, they understand the machlokas when it says they have to bring a raya differently. They say, now, okay, so let me take a step back. First of all, what they're going to say is everyone agrees with Rav Nassan, that we look at the chazaka dahashta. So what is the chazaka dahashta? Chazaka dahashta says you look at what's now, and we assume that's what was. So how does the chazaka dahashta work in our case, as we just said a minute ago? Since now he's healthy, we assume that when he gave the gift, he was healthy. If he wants to say that he was sick. So we're going to say everyone agrees with that. Now, let's just take a step back before we get into this to just describe a concept that hopefully you remember from Ksubas. We have the idea of Pesha Aser, Hua Pesha Hitter. That's what today's sugya is really going to be about. Those words mean Pesha Aser, the mouth that made something Aser. Hua Pesha Hitter, that's the mouth that made something Mutter. So what would be the prototypical example of this? Who comes to a rabbi or comes to Bezdin and says she wants to get married. So they say, okay, fine. She says, look, by the way, I was married previously, but my husband divorced me, right? So now the question is as follows. We believe a person to say something about themselves that incriminates them, right? So she said she was married. If we leave it at that stage that she was married, then she can't get married to someone else now because she's an Eshes Ish, right? So that we believe a woman for. Now the question is, she then says, I was divorced. Ordinarily, if we have a chazaka that someone is married, first there need to be, in order to get remarried, there need to be witnesses, two witnesses, that say she got divorced. But in this case, she's saying both sides. I got married, I got divorced. So you might say she's married because she's making herself usher to the rest of the world. It does not work for her to say that she is divorced because you need two witnesses for that. You might say that way. The Gemara says no. Because we had no reason in this circumstance to think that she was ever married. There was nothing that led us to believe that she was married. Therefore, why do we think she's married? Because she said she's married. So if we're going to believe her that she was married, then we're going to believe her in that same statement to say she was divorced. And therefore, we're not going to prevent her from getting married. So that's the case of Pesha Asa Pesha Hitter. In a case of Isser, and everyone agrees that's a settled principle. We're going to discuss a little bit the application of Pesha Asa Pesha Hitter in a case of a shtar. Okay, so now going back to the Gemara, Rav Chisda and Rav Huna, 6 lines down. Rav Chisda and Rav Huna say that what kind of raya are we talking about in our Mishnah? Amri Raya B'Kiyum Shtar. That the question is a Raya B'Kiyum Shtar. So as I said before, both Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim hold like Reb Nassim, and we would follow the Chazaka Dahashta. And the Chazaka Dahashta says that the guy was healthy when he did it, and he needs to bring Eidim. Now the question is as follows: that the person is saying that the guy is saying, yes, I wrote a gift giving it to this guy. He says he was deathly ill at that time, and therefore, since he got better, it's gone, right? So the question now is as follows. According to Meir, it's very simple. He said he wrote the document, he acknowledges it, and the Chazaka Dahashta says he was healthy. He needs to bring Eidim. That's how Meir understands. Very simple equation. The Chachamim say, hold on here. That on the one hand, I agree with Rabbi Nassim, and you look at the Chazaka Dahashta. Chazaka Dahashta says just like he's healthy now, he was healthy then, and he should have to bring witnesses, right? But what's the problem? Is that this whole thing to say that this whole thing that says that the gift goes through is based on a shtar, right? And a shtar needs to be mekuyim. That you need to certify a shtar. So the question is, this guy who wants the gift and who's saying you were healthy when you gave it to me and therefore it's a permanent gift, he's relying on the shtar, right? And so the question is, where is the shtar certified? So according to Reb Meir, this is not a problem because the guy himself said, I wrote the shtar. He's just claiming that he was sick at that time, but we don't listen to that because we look at the Chazaka Dahashta. Well, one second. We do look at the Chazaka Dahashta and therefore assume that he was well. But in order for the guy to claim the gift under the shtar, he needs to certify the shtar. How's he going to certify the shtar? The only way to certify how's he going to certify the shtar? Well, why not say the fact that the guy himself admitted he wrote the shtar? He said I wrote the shtar, just that he was a shliv meirah. So the Chachamim say I can't rely on that because when he said I certified the shtar, yes, I wrote it, right? So on the one hand, he's certifying the shtar, but in that same sentence, he's saying, but he says he was a shliv meirah, and therefore the gift is invalid. So the Chachamim say this is a case of pesha aser who a pesha hitter. If the only way we know the contract was valid was because he said it was valid, but in that same statement where he said it was valid, he said it's invalid because he said that he was a shliv meirah. And now that he got better, it's an invalid gift. Therefore, says the Chachamim, what does he need to bring a raya when the Chachamim say that the recipient needs to bring a raya in order to get the gift? He needs to bring a raya that he does not need to bring eidim that prove that he was healthy. That's unnecessary, although that would help. But rather, all he needs to do is be Mekayim the shtar. How is he Mekayim the shtar? He goes into Bezdin, he brings the shtar, Bezdin checks the signatures, they say these are valid signatures, they attach their stamp or their seal, and now it's a certified document. So how does this help? Because once it's a certified document, we can collect from him. And say, oh, he's claiming that it's not a valid document, or we say, sorry, because Chazaka Dahashta says you were healthy then, and if you want to disprove this, you have to prove you are sick. About Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitter, because we're not relying on the first part of his statement to acknowledge the validity of the document. The validity of the document was established by Bezdin having said that it's a valid document and attaching their stamp. So then we're not worried in other words, we're not worried about the second part of his statement that he says that he was ill, because we look at the Chazaka Dahashta, which says that he was well. So that is the machlokas, the way Rav Chisda and Rav Bar Huna understand it, which is that they agree with Rav Nassim. You look at Chazaka Dahashta. So what are they arguing about when Rav Meir says witnesses that he was sick is because since he acknowledged the validity of the document, and the Chazaka Dahashta says he was well, if he wants to disprove that, he needs to bring Eidim. And the Chachamim are saying, I agree that we look at the Chazaka Dahashta, but you're still, in order to get to the Chazaka Dahashta, you have to prove you have a shtar. How do you have a shtar? Because the guy himself said, but he also said that it was a shliv meirah. So therefore, you need kiyum shtaras. That is the machlokas, the way that Rav Chisda and Rav Bar Huna understand it. So kamifl gibim moda b'shtar shekasu tzarich l'kaimo. So what does it come out that they're arguing about? What's the difference between Rav Meir and the Chachamim? They're talking about a case where Rav Meir was willing to say, look, as soon as the guy acknowledged that he had a shtar, and that goes together with the Chazaka Dahashta. So he's saying, Moda b'shtar shekasvu. he wrote the star, then Remeir Savar Moed B'Shtar Shekasu Eina Tzarich L'Kaimo. Remeir holds he doesn't need to do it because even if it's Pesha Asar Hua Pesha Hitter, that does not apply by a star. If I had more time, I would try to explain why. But let's just say, in other words, he's going to say by a star it's different. He does not hold that Pesha Asar Pesha Hitter applies, and therefore we look at the first half of his sentence that says it's a valid star, and then we rely on the Chazaka Dahashto. Rabbanan Savi, the Rabbanan say no. Moed B'Shtar Shekasvu Tzarich L'Kaimo. That if a guy admits that he wrote the star, but at the same time he has a Pesha Asar Pesha Hitter, and he says the star is not a good star, then you need to bring witnesses to certify it, because we don't rely on the first half of the statement to the exclusion of the second half of the statement. So that is the machlokas in our Mishnah according to Rav Chisda and Rav Bar Huna. So the Gemara asks, but and the Chachamim already argued. If you're saying that that's what they're arguing about in our Mishnah, I have a problem with that. What's the problem? Is that they already had this exact same machlokas. So why would you explain our Mishnah the way Rav Huna and Rav Chisda and Rav Bar Huna explain it? This argument that the Rameir and the Chacham, they're already arguing subas, and why should you worry about it here? Rather, you should explain it like Rav Huna, where it's a different machlokas. Why? Where do we see that Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim argue in this very issue? The Sanya, because we learned in a Brisa in subas. Let me say this outside, because first of all, as the Rosh points out, we need to understand the Mishnah in Ksubas first, and then this Brisa. So basically, the case in Ksubas is as follows: that Eidim are Makai. Okay, so what happens? A guy goes to collect money from someone. He says, Maishi, you owe me $100. Maishi says, I agree, and he brings a star. Maishi says, I agree that I wrote that star, but I paid it already. And so now we have a case of Pesha Asar or Pesha Hitter, but we're going to look at the facts. So the question becomes as follows. If we look at the first half of his statement, right, we're going to say that he wrote the document, he acknowledges that he wrote the document, and therefore he should have to pay me, right? And we can ignore the second half, because in a star we don't say Pesha Asar Pesha Hitter. That's one possibility, right? The other way to look at it is we say as follows: that Maishi admits that he wrote the star, but he's also says that he paid it. So therefore we need Eidim. So they go out and find Eidim, and what happens? The Eidim come and they say, yes, we witnessed, yes, we signed that we witnessed this transaction. That star is a valid star that we signed, but there's a problem. They say either we were ketanim at the time we did it, we were not bar mitzvah, so we weren't eligible to be witnesses, or they say we were coerced into signing it, right? So now we have a double level of Pesha Asar Pesha Hitter, because we have Maishi saying star, but I paid it, and then you have the Eidim saying yes, it's a valid star, but we were invalid witnesses, right? So now here comes the issue. So the way they're learning is as follows. Rabbi Meir looks at this and says, in a case of a star, we don't look at a Pesha Asar Pesha Hitter case, and therefore, what's going to happen? That as soon as Maishi says, I signed the star, yes, I signed the star, even though he continues his sentence to say, but I paid it, we don't care, because he's now certified his star, and that star is valid because you can always collect on a star. That's how Rabbi Meir sees it. The inquiry cuts off right there. The Chachamim, though, they look at it as follows, and they say, wait, Maishi said he signed it, but at the same time he said he paid it. So you can't rely on that. So therefore, what do you need? You need Eidim. But the Eidim themselves have a Pesha Asar who a Pesha Hitter, right? And so therefore, the Gemara says, the Tanya, the Brisa, okay, so the Mishnah says exactly like the Chachamim, which is basically the Mishnah says that we don't collect. We don't believe that. That we believe the Eidim that they were anusim or they were ketanim. We have to rely. If we're going to rely on the first part of the statement, we're going to rely on the second part of the statement. The Brisa brings this machlokas and says, would there not believe the fact that the witnesses are casting doubt on the validity of this star doesn't matter according to Reb Meir. Why? Because Reb Meir never got to the second level of even hearing from the witnesses. I wrote it, end of inquiry. So there are no witnesses who come to Bezdin and say, this is an invalid star because we were anusim or we were ketanim, right? That's Rabbi Meir. But Chachamim say nemanim. We believe these witnesses to say that it's an invalid star. Why? Because Maishi's statement wasn't enough. So we went out to look for witnesses. Once we bring witnesses into the picture, the witnesses are casting doubt on the validity of the star because they're saying, yes, while we signed it, we were invalid witnesses. So therefore, we're left with a case of believing the witnesses that were invalid, and therefore the guy coming to collect, in my case, me, is stuck because I don't have a validly certified star because the Eidim who signed the star said they weren't valid Eidim. And I don't have a proof from Maishi that he wrote it because he said at the same time he paid it already, and it's not a valid star. So I have no proof that my star is valid. So I'm up a creek. So what do we see? We see another case in Ksubas where Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim are arguing about this very question, which is once someone is motive in a star that he wrote it, invalid in some fashion, do we look to be Mekayim the star or not? So you see the machlokas in two places, and that's a kasha on our Mishnah. Because why would the Mishnah need to say it in a second place? I needed both cases. It's not enough to say it in one. The itmar hahi, because if I only told you that case in Ksubis, be'ahi kamri rabbanon, so I would say in that case the rabbanon look at the witnesses and therefore they disqualify the star. Why? Mishum da'alimi edim umari shtare. So he says because edim are very powerful, and they could undermine a star. What does that mean that they can undermine a star? The Rishonim explain as follows. The Gemara in Ksubas and Daf Chaf says the following case. How does it work? Anytime I want to collect a star, I take my star to Bezdin, they check the signatures, they don't necessarily have to find those witnesses, and they certify it, right? So that happened. I take my star to Bezdin, they certify it. Meanwhile, other Eidim, and then I bring it to go collect based on that star. Other Eidim come along, the Eidim who were signed originally, and they say that was a false star, right? So now what happens? We have Bezdin's certification says, yes, I can collect, and the Eidim say, no, I can't collect. So what happens when we have two competing versions? Nothing. So you leave things the way they are. So therefore, what do you see? You see that Eidim are strong enough that they could uproot a certification, a certified star of Bezdin. So once you see that Eidim are powerful, so let's remind ourselves, in the case in Ksubis, what happened? You had Eidim saying there's an invalid star. So if I only told you this case, I would say that when do the Rabbanan say the second half of the statement? And therefore we passel the star. That's where we have Eidim saying you should passel the star. But in our case, here in Bava Basra, where we're just dealing with a case of a guy who says, yes, I wrote the star, but he says he was a Shchiv Meirah, he doesn't have the power. He's not Eidim that can negate a star. So Emalo, I would tell you that therefore the Rabbanan would say, even the Rabbanan would agree that we don't apply Pesha Asa Pesha Hitter to reduce the significance. So therefore, I needed to tell you not just there, but I needed to tell you here to show you that the Chachamim say it even when it's not Eidim, but it's he himself who's undermining the first part of his statement. Validity of the star. And if I would only tell it to you here, in our case, we're in Bava Basra, I would say Bahakam or Rabbi Meir. So I would say in this case, Rabbi Meir says that we stop after the first part of the star and we don't even look. We stop after the first part of Maishi's statement. We don't even look beyond that. He says, when does he say that? In our case, who's negating the first part? Maishi's doing it himself. So therefore, in that case, I would say in that case, Rabbi Meir says, we ignore what comes after. But I would say that in the case in Ksubas, maybe Rabbi Meir is masking to the Rabbanan that since you have Eidim, what Maishi is saying, so then I would say no. In that case, I'm not going to apply Pasha Asa Pasha Hitter. I'm sorry. In that case, Rabbi Meir would agree that we apply Pasha Asa Pasha Hitter because we have Eidim going on here. So I might think that's Sricha. So therefore, we understand that whether there are Eidim or whether it's the person himself undermining his own claim, meaning saying it's a valid star, but the person doing it, or whether it's Eidim who cast doubt on it, that in either case they stand by their opinion. The Meir holds we stop right after Maishi says his first phrase, and the Chachamim say no. If it's a Pasha Asa Pasha Hitter, whether at Moshe's level or at the Edom level, then we need to look at it. So that is, so that's, okay, so now we have the Machlokas, and we see the Gemara, the Brisa, and the Mishnah and Ksubas, you see the same Machlokas. V'chein Amar Rabba, and Rabba also said, Raya be'edim, that the Raya is with Edom. So remember, we had a Machlokas, Rav Huna on one hand, and Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna on the other hand. Rav Huna said Edom, Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna said, we're talking about Kiyam Shtar. So Rabba holds like Rav Huna, and he says we're talking about Edom. Abaya said to him, my timer, what's your reason? So what Abaya wanted to know is, why are you saying that he has to bring Edom, that he was sick? Why not just let him shtar? Once he certifies the shtar, we see that it's a valid shtar. So let him, granted, you can't rely on a pesha aser, pesha hitter. You can't rely on his statement that says it was a valid shtar, because he also says he was a shchiv meirah. But at least let him certify. Why are you making him go out and get witnesses that say, why do you make him have to go out and get witnesses that say he was sick? You have to give him witnesses that say he was well. So Abaya wants to know, to Rabba, why are you forcing there to be Edom and you're not satisfied with the Kiyam Shtaras? So Abaya says, so maybe you'll tell me, it says, since in every shtar that's written, a normal shtar, so he said, a regular shtar says, while he was walking around in the shuk, meaning he wasn't ill, that while he was not ill, he gave over this. But this document, as we discussed, is one where it's not clear that whether he was healthy or shchiv meirah. So therefore, I might say, Shema mina shchiv meirah have. He says, maybe you'll tell me the reason that you don't want to rely on a certified shtar is because even if you certify the shtar, it's insufficient. Why is it insufficient? Because the shtar itself, even if you certify it to make it a valid shtar, the question is, what does the shtar say? The shtar itself, by the fact that it doesn't say he was healthy and well, implies that he was a shchiv meirah. So you may certify the shtar to say that he was. You may certify the shtar and say that it's a valid shtar, but who cares? Because maybe the shtar itself argument that he was healthy, and therefore you can't use it to take the property from him, because he'll say the shtar itself shows that he was a shchiv meirah because it doesn't say that he was well. So Abaya says, if you're going to tell me that's the reason, Adarabba, so say the opposite. It's not like it either writes he was healthy or writes nothing. The custom is, normally in a case of a shchiv meirah, they write that when he was short, meaning he was sick, he was short on life, but Rami Ba'arse was laying in his bed, right? So normally in a matna shchiv meirah document, they say he was a shchiv meirah. And it wasn't written here. Shema mina bari have. Abaya says, if you're going to tell me the reason you don't want to just certify with witnesses is because the shtar itself, his claim that he's a shchiv meirah because it doesn't say he was healthy, I'll say that the shtar itself supports that he was healthy because it doesn't say that he was a shchiv meirah. So I'll give it right back to you. Or Rabba can come back and say, you're right. So you can make that argument either way. And since there's no proof, we're going to go back and put the money in the cheskas mareh, zakah of its owner. Who is that? That's the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. In other words, we're going to say, when the document can't be demonstrated either way to prove something, then we're going to go basa the chazakah of the property. That's the opinion of Rabbah. Okay, so now Rabbah supports Rav Huna, and that's fine. Now we're going to say ubeplukta to Rabbi Yochanan. Ubeplukta. This is a further machlokas. So we had a machlokas. Rav Huna on one hand who said Edom, Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna on the other hand who said Kiyam Shtar, and we had Rabbah say I agree with Rav Huna that it's Edom. Now we're going to say there's a further machlokas. The Rabbi Yochanan Amar Raya be'Edom, Rav Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish Amar says Raya be'Kiyam Shtar. So now you see that Rabbi Yochanan says like Rav Huna and Rabbah, and Reish Lakish says like Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna. Okay, so we're just participants in the same machlokas. So now, but once we've brought in Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, we can have a discussion about things that Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish asked each other. So Esvei, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan who says that when they bring a raya, they have to bring a raya of witnesses, and what they're arguing about is the Nasser of Yaakov. He said, he asked Reish Lakish, on your opinion, Reish Lakish, who says that we're dealing with a question of whether when someone's first part of the statement establishes the shtar, do we apply Pesha Aser or not? So he asked the question as follows. Maisa, there's a brisa that says Maisa b'Bnei Brak, that there was a story in Bnei Brak. Be'achad shemachar b'nichse aviv umeis. Okay, so what happened? You had a father. He had assets to one son. That son inherited them, and then the son sold them to someone, and then the son died. Right? Okay, so that's the case. So, but what happened? So, had the son not sold the assets and then he died, who would have inherited him? His brothers or whoever, his family. So his family comes and says, you think he sold it or gave it to other people. He didn't really. Why? He wasn't entitled to do that because he was a katan. Katan in this case doesn't mean 13, but that's relevant to a sugya that's tomorrow, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But in any event, they say that he was not validly allowed to transfer these assets. Ubo v'shalos Rabbi Akiva. They came to Rabbi Akiva and said, "Ma'u lebotko." So they wanted to do. So the argument came down to the question of: did this son who got the assets and sold them before he died, did he have shtei cyrus? Did he have 2 pubic hairs? Question of whether he's a katan or a gadol. So what happened? The people, the buyers were coming and saying, I want the properties I bought. And the family saying, no, he wasn't allowed to sell it to you because he was a katan. Well, look, we can't find witnesses that show he was a gadol, so let's dig him up, or maybe he's not dead, but they just want to check him out and see whether he has shtei cyrus. Rabbi Akiva said back to them 2 things. Number 1, iatem rashayim lanavlo. You can't just because you're trying to collect money, you can't sit here and disgrace the dead body by sitting here and doing an examination of his pubic area. So that's number 1. Then furthermore, simanim asin lishtanas la'achamisa. He says, anyway, you're wasting your time if you do this. Why? Because simanim, in order to be simanim, there have to be 2 cyrus, and those 2 cyrus have to be coming out of something, directly out of the skin. If it comes out of a mole, that's not considered shtei cyrus, right? So what Rabbi Akiva was saying is we have 2 problems. Number 1 is maybe the hairs were there and they fell out, and even if they are there now, the body changes, and what during life would have looked like it comes out of a mole, in death will look like it was a valid hair. So he's saying there's no proof, because basically the body changes from the time a person is alive till he's dead. So there's no purpose to dig him up here. So now that's the story. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying to Reish Lakish, Bishlam aladidi ta'amina raya be'edim. Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish that according to me it's good, because how can you prove the shtar? Because remember, there's a shtar that was sold, and the question is, was the guy a katan? So if you have to prove it with edim, kivan da'amar lulakuchas isi edim. So what happened in this case? The buyers were coming and saying, give us the property he sold us. The family says he was a katan and bring us witnesses. So they go look for witnesses, and they didn't find. So hainu the ka'asuv amru leimau libdog. Lebodko. That's why they come to Rabbi Akiva and say, we couldn't find Adam. The family's telling us bring Adam. We couldn't find Adam, and therefore we want to do a post-mortem exam. That makes sense according to me, who says that you have to bring witnesses. It's not enough to certify a shtar. But according to you, the Amrit Raya Bekim Ashtar, according to you, Reish Lakish, who says that you don't need to bring witnesses, it's enough once you certify the shtar. Lamalahu lebodko. Why do you need to go through this effort of trying to have a post-mortem exam? Likaimu shtarayu v'lukme b'nechse. So he says, why not just be Makayim the shtar? Because remember, there was a shtar that the katan, that the son sold it to these people. Instead of trying to bring proof whether he had 2 hairs, he didn't have 2 hairs. that certify the shtar of sale, and then you have a document, and you don't need to rely on his statement that says, the family statement that says, yes, it was a shtar, but it was invalid because he was a katan. So forget the family's view, just be Makayim the shtar. But from the fact that they didn't do that and instead tried to have this post-mortem exam, that being Makayim the shtar is not enough, and you need witnesses. So Rabbi Yochanan says it's a raya like me, and like Rabbah, and like Rav Huna, that you can only establish it with witnesses. It's not enough to just be Makayim the shtar. So the Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish answers him and says, no, you're misunderstanding this case. Mi savret, do you think that nichse b'chezkas b'nei mishpacha kaimi? You're assuming in your question. What did we assume was the case? Father died, son got the assets, he's still holding on, and he sold them, he's still holding on to them, he hasn't given them to the buyers yet, he dies. Family comes and says, so buyers come and say, give us the properties we bought. Family says, sorry, no can do, he was a minor, right? So now we're talking, and that's how we understood the case. And then we were saying, if it's enough to be Mekayim Shtaras, then don't check his hairs. But we're saying, Reish Lakish says, but that's not the case. So he continues. He says, do you think that we're talking about that the Nechasim are in the family member's possession? Because the Lukuchas and the buyers are coming Umari and they're tining and they're saying, So they're tiny saying, give it to us. He says, no, it's nichse becheskes l'kuchos kaimi. So he says, no, what happened here is as follows. Son received assets, son sold them to people got the assets, and the family's coming back and saying, whoa, give us back those assets because he was never entitled to sell it to you in the first place. Because also b'nei mishpacha, it's not the buyers who are coming and trying to get possession. It's the family who's coming and trying to get possession, become ma'ariri, and they're arguing and saying that our brother, son, father, whatever he is, didn't have the right to sell it because he was a minor. So therefore, Reish Lakish is answering Rabbi Yochanan and saying, there's no proof to your point that you need Eidim and Kiyum Shtar is not enough, because in this case, if it's the family who's trying to take something, being Mekayim the Shtar not only is not helpful, it's bad, because being Mekayim the Shtar says that the sale from the son to the buyers was valid. They're trying to say it was invalid. So of course they're not going to be Mekayim the Shtar. So Reish Lakish is saying to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no raya because you got the facts wrong. And therefore, the reason it doesn't talk about Kiyum Shtaros is because in this particular case, the ones who are making the claim stand to lose if they have Kiyum Shtaros. They don't stand to gain. And now the Gemara says, Hachinami Mistabra, or Reish Lakish says, not only that this language makes sense, it makes sense that we're dealing with a case where the family is demanding the property back from the Lekuchos, and not that the Lekuchos are coming and saying, honor the contract. Why? Why? Because he's saying, it makes sense if you tell me that the family is coming and trying to get the assets back from the Lekuchos, and they go to Rabbi Akiva. And then Rabbi Akiva says you can't be menavel the mace. You can't embarrass the mace this way by doing an exam. So shtiku. So the relatives, because they agreed, they didn't want their family member to get an exam. So if you say that the family is the one who, that's why they were quiet when the answer was given and saying you can't be menavel the mace, because they were like, you know what, you're right, we want the assets back, but we also don't want to, be menavel the mace. But if you're saying, like you thought originally, Rabbi Yochanan, in your question, that it's the buyers who are coming and tinying that they want the assets, why would they be quiet when Rabbi Akiva says you can't be menavel the mace? Let them say to Rabbi Akiva, Nan zuzi avinon lei. We gave him good money. Let him be disgraced. Big deal. Let's check him out. In other words, why did they just give up when Rabbi Akiva said it? So if you understand that it's the family, they gave up because they said, you know what, you're right. It's a bizayon to the mace. We don't want our family member to get checked. But if it was the Lekuchos demanding it, why did they get quiet? Why would they have said, well, what do you mean? I don't care if it's menavel him. He took our money and he said he was selling us the properties. We want the properties. So the Gemara says, Imi Shemha. So now they're not Shlakish's answer. They're just uprooting this hachinami mistaber. They're saying no. The fact that they were quiet doesn't prove anything, because if that's why you're saying it, that's not a good proof. Because hachikamer lahu. Because remember what Rabbi Akiva said to them. Chada di'atem rishayim l'navlo. First of all, you can't be menavel the mace. If you're going to tell me, I don't care, he took my money, let him be examined. But it's not going to help you anyway. So in other words, they're coming back and saying the fact that they were quiet is not proof that it was the relatives, because you can't look at it in isolation. Rabbi Akiva didn't just say you can't be menavel him. If that's all he said, the relatives would have come back and said, oh, I don't care, be menavel him anyway. So if you look at Rabbi Akiva's statement in the first statement in isolation, that's fine. You would expect them to come back and argue. But once you look at the two statements together, there's no reason to expect them to argue. Why? Because first he said you're going to be menavel the mace. That they would fight with. But then he says, but even if you're going to do a post-mortem exam, it doesn't mean anything because things change. So therefore, at that point, the relative, even if it's the relatives who are tining, even if it's the buyers who are tining and not the relatives, the buyers aren't going to make noise about being menavel the mace, because after he said it's nivol mace, he also said, and it's not going to help you anyway. So why should they argue at that point? So that part is not a raya. Sorry. Okay, so we're at the parentheses, which is the machlokas and Rishonim, whether it's tashma or not. We're going to go with the version we have here, which does not see it as tashma. It's just going to be a discussion between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Show Reb Shimon ben Lakish as Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, Zu sheshnuya b'mishnas bar kapara. This that was learned in the Mishnah's bar kapara. Bar kapara was someone who put together a collection of brises, which is called Mishnah's bar kapara. And it's the following case. The guy who was eating in a field, meaning he was sitting there, field. Everyone assumed it was his. The karal of echad irer lomer shalihu. Someone came out and made a tine on him and said it's mine. So what happened? This, I think you have to understand this, and Rishonim say this way, that what happened was this is within the 3 years. Remember, if someone is within 3 years, we say he has to hold on to his star. If he doesn't hold on to his star, he loses it. So this guy comes and says, this was my field, and I never sold it to you, and it's within the 3 years. You haven't, granted, everyone sees you eating there now, and no one thinks it's not yours, but you haven't been there for 3 years, right? And so it's mine. Hotzi says, oh no. And this guy, the guy who's sitting in the field eating, brings out the document, Lomer, saying, Shemacharteli o shenasim li b'matana. He says back to the guy, what are you talking about? Yes, you were the owner, but I bought it from you, or you gave it to me as a gift. And he produces a star to that effect. So im amar any makir b'shtar zemei olam. So so now who has, in this case, the way I think you have to look at it is the guy who's the challenger saying it's my field, he has the upper hand because it's within the first 3 years. This guy's producing a star. The guy who has the upper hand, the challenger, comes and says, I don't recognize that star. That's a forgery. So then, Yishtayim Ashar B'chosmo. Then in order to hold on to the field, prove that it is a valid star. How do you do that? By getting the star certified. Okay, that's not the part that interests our Gemara. But the second part is Im Amar Shtar Pasim Huzeh or Shtar Amana Shemacharti Lach Lonasati Li Damim. So he says as follows. But what happens if instead of claiming that the star is a forgery, the challenger, the guy who's saying you're in my field, says, I agree that I wrote that star, but it was one of two kinds of stars, both of which we've encountered before. A Shtar Pasim, where a guy wanted to look like he's wealthy. So he says to this guy, write a star that I'm buying your office building for $85 million. People are going to say, big shot over there. He has $85 million. So it looks good to have a star that you're buying something for $85 million, right? So that's a Shtar Pasim. So you're saying it was never a real star. You never really bought it from me. I just gave you the star, so you should look good. That's a Shtar Pasim. It's a star that I trusted you, which is saying what? That you were buying my field. Now, you didn't pay me yet. I gave you the star on trusting you that you're going to pay me. Now, meanwhile, you haven't paid me. So in either case, what the challenger is saying is, yes, that star you produced, I did write it, but it's an invalid star, either because it was a star pasim or a star mana. So now what do we have? We have a pesha aser, because the guy says, yes, I wrote that star, which implies the guy in the field now was valid, but he says, but no, it's not a valid star because you had no right, because it was a star pasim or star mana, and therefore I should kick you out of the field. So now we say as follows. Imamar star pasim, who's the star mana, he says it's a star pasim, or it's a trust star that I sold it to you and gave you the star even though you hadn't paid me yet. So then halach is as follows. Im yesh edim halachachar edim. If they're edim that prove the case, lav, and if not, halachachar star. You go after the star. So either bring edim, or so now the guy, once he admits the star, he has to bring edim if he wants to uproot the guy from the field. And if not, and if you don't have edim to uproot him out of the field, halachachar star, then you look at the star, and the star says the guy who's in it bought it. So therefore, we win. So what do you notice does not happen here? They don't say, so you have a case where the guy was pesha aser who a pesha hitter. And it's saying, basically, we look at his pesha aser that acknowledged the document, and we say, either bring witnesses or you're out of luck. So what do you see? You don't look at the second half of the statement that says those star pasim or star amana, and you don't say you have to bring witnesses that certify the star. You just say, either look at the star or bring edim. It says, so Rabbi Yochanan says to Rish Lakish, Lema Remeirhi, the Amr Moda B'Shtar Shekasva in Tzarech L'Kaimo. This looks like a case of Remeir. Remeir is the one who says that if someone is Moda on a star that he wrote it, meaning he acknowledges a valid star, but when he says, oh, the star man or star pasim ain't Tzarech L'Kaimo, you don't need to bring witnesses, and basically the star stands. And either you don't need to bring witnesses to certify it, either bring witnesses that negate it, the guy can keep the field. Remeir is not the Rabbana. So Amar Lei, he said to him, so Rabbi Yochanan said back to Rish Lakish, Lo, Shani Omer, because I say, Divrei Hakol Mod B'Shtar Shekasu Ein Tzarech L'Kaimo. Don't tell me that this is Rabbi Meir that says you don't need to be Mekayim it. It's even the Chachamim, because everyone holds that you don't need to be Mekayim a star. Now, mind you, we've been spending the whole day talking about a machlokas, about whether you need to be Mekayim a star. So we're going to see what this means in a minute. So the Gemara says, V'ha miflig pligi. But we have been arguing. This nan, because we learned this actually, the Masar Sasha says the Tzanya, it's this brisa that we had in Ksubas. That we don't believe the witnesses who said that they were underage or forced. That's Reb Meir, because we never get to that second stage, because once Moshe acknowledged that he wrote the star, that's it. And the Chachamim say they are believed, and therefore Pesha Aser, Pesha Hitter knocks out both levels. So you see that they're arguing about whether you stop after the first part, whether someone Moda B'Shtar, someone admits the star, that ain't Tzarech L'Kaimo, that at that point the inquiry ends. So you see that they do argue. Amar Lei, he says, what are you bringing me a proof that there's a machlokes in the Gemara and Ksubas to say they argue about it? Because remember, the Gemara and Ksubas was the one case where you had Edim who were coming and saying that the star is invalid, because the Edim said we were either ketanim or we were forced. So he says, you're going to bring, and I just finished telling you no one argues. Everyone agrees that you cut off after the first half of the statement. You'll bring me the machlokas and ksubas. The machlokas and ksubas is no raya, because the machlokas and ksubas is a case where you had edim saying that the star, they themselves were saying that the star was invalid. And if the edim are causing question, and we said before, edim are very powerful because they can go up against a certified document. So maybe it's only in ksubas that they argue, but everywhere else, everyone agrees with me. Amar Lei. So they said so this is very weird that Rabbi Yochanan says everyone agrees there's no machlokas except where there's edim. So Amar Lei, but what about this that they said in your name, Rabbi Yochanan? Yafa iraru b'nei mishpacha. This goes back to the case in Bnei Brak. Father died, son sold, son dies, family is taining now, right? And so they quoted Rabbi Yochanan saying that Rabbi Yochanan said that the family has a good taina. What's the family's taina? They say it was a valid star, but he was a katan. So what do you see? If you're saying that the family has a valid taina, you're saying that you look at the second half of the statement, because that's what makes their taina good. Saying, but he was a katan. If you're looking at the second half of the statement, what do you see? You see that you have a case where you require kiyum shtaris. You don't cut it off after the first part. If you cut it off after the first part, the family said, yes, he sold it, but we say, we don't care about the but. But we see we do care about the but, because it said, the Rabbi Yochanan said that the mishpacha had a good taina, was saying he was a katan. So Amar Lei, Rabbi Yochanan said back, Zu Elazar Amra. He says, this was my student, Elazar, said it in my name. But I never said it, that it was falsely attributed to me that I said they have a good taina. Why? Because I think that everyone agrees that you don't need to be Mekayim the shtar, you cut off the statement. So, Reb Zera says, nice try. Im Yichbar Reb Yochanan Reb Elazar, if Reb Yochanan's going to negate this that was quoted in his name by Reb Elazar, who was his Talmud, Reb Elazar Talmido, so Yichbar Reb Yanai Rabo, will he also say that he never said it when his Rebbe Reb Yanai said it? What is that case? The Reb Yanai, that Reb Yanai said, Rebbe said, Moda b'shtar shekasu tzarach l'kaimo, that someone who is Moda b'shtar, that it was written, you do need to establish it. V'amar le Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan said to him, Rebbe, why are you saying this halacha that if you write a shtar, you do need to certify it, which means you rely on Pesha or Pesha Hitter. Why did you need to say it? Isn't that our Mishnah? Where did our Mishnah say? And what is the case of bringing a raya? Is being Mekayim Shtar. So what do you see? When you have to be Mekayim Shtar, means you can't rely on the contract itself, because you can't rely on the person's admission, because we look at Pesha or Pesha Hitter. So what do you see? You see Rabbi Yochanan said to his Rebbe, that why do you need to tell me that you didn't mean Mekayim the Shtar because we rely on Pesha or Pesha Hitter? That's the view of the Chachamim in the Mishnah. So the Chachamim already said it, and the Halach is like the Chachamim. So why did you need to say it? So what do you see from this? You see that Rabbi Yochanan is saying, we do rely on Pesha or Pesha Hitter. We don't cut it off midway. So we have another problem with Rabbi Yochanan. So this one, Reb Zera says, at this point is getting a little ridiculous. We have Rabbi Yochanan saying something that he seems in many other cases not to say. So he says, rather, Reb Zera continues, Baram Nira'im Divrei Rabbeinu Yosef. He says, no, the explanation, remember, where did all this come from? We were trying to explain this statement that Rabbi Yochanan said, that everyone agrees that you don't need to Mekayim a shtar. So, and we were trying to figure out how could Rabbi Yochanan say that, because he seems to say you do need to be Mekayim the shtar. So now we're going to explain it differently. He says, no, this statement of Rabbi Yochanan was based on the understanding of Rabbeinu Yosef. Rabbeinu Yosef basically has it exactly flipped. He has the Chachamim saying what we had Rabbi Meir saying, and has Rabbi Meir saying what the Chachamim said. Where do we see that? The Amar Rabbeinu Yosef said, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, who said in the Rabbi Yehuda name of Shmuel, Zu Divrei Chachamim. These are the words of Chachamim. Av Rabbi Meir, Amar Rabbi Meir says, Moda b'shtar shekasu shetzarach l'kaimo. Who says that someone who relies on a shtar needs to be Mekayim it because we rely on Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitter. So until now we were saying that Rabbi Meir does not hold the Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitter by a shtar, but the Chachamim do, and the Chachamim therefore say, because I can't rely on the first part of his statement without the second, I need Eidim. Exactly the opposite. So when Rabbi Yochanan said everyone holds that you don't need to be Mekayim the shtar, who was that? The Rabbanan L'Gaber Rabbi Meir Divrei Akoli. It's not that there's no machlokas. So we had trouble because we said there's no machlokas, but we said we have cases of machlokas. So he says yes, there's machlokas, but for all intents and purposes, the halacha is like the Chachamim, and the Chachamim hold Ein Tzarech L'Kaimo, and therefore Rabbi Meir is nothing as relates to this. So that's what he means by Divrei Akol, that Ein Tzarech L'Kaimo, they don't need Kiyum Ashtar. What we're saying is as follows. Once you understand that it's flipped, and you could say that the Chachamim, because remember we say like the Chachamim, once you could say that the Chachamim hold Ein Tzarech L'Kaimo, so then you could say Tzarech L'Kaimo, because basically if the Rabbanan say it, that's the halacha, you could say everyone agrees. The Gemara says, we learned the opposite in our Mishnah. You're bringing Rabbeinu Yosef and saying that the Rabbeinu Yosef hold that the Rabbanan hold you cut off the statement after the first part, and Reb Meir is the one who says that you have Pesha or Pesha Heter, but we have our Mishnah that says but the Chachamim say you should switch it, and the Chacham say it's a Motzi Mechavel Baraya, which implies that you need Kiyam Shtaros, which implies that you hold a Pesha or Pesha Heter. So you see that you do need to be Mekayim it. So the Gemara says, Epoch, switch the Mishnah. That our Mishnah, which we had the Chacham and Meir, switch their views. The Gemara says, what about the Bryce and Ksubas? And remember, we asked that the Bryce and Ksubas and the Mishnah are saying the same thing. Why do we need both? So there also it had Rabbi Meir and the Chacham that way. The Gemara says, Epoch, switch it. So now the Gemara says, well, I have a different problem. Because when Rabbi Yochanan answered his Rebbe, and he said that this is the Chachamim, and remember what he said. He said, what do you need to tell to me? The Chachamim already said, and you see that we require certification. So he says, Rabbi Yochanan Raya be'edim kamar. I'm sorry. He says we need edim. So what do you see? That in the case with his Rabbi Yochanan was saying that you need Raya B'Kiyam Ashtar. But we said earlier that Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Rav Huna. So the Gemara says, Epoch, switch that too. We're going to switch all these things with Rabbi Yochanan, we're going to switch that. So the Gemara says, Lemo Lepoch Nami Tiyufta. What about the fact, if you remember, Rabbi Yochanan asked a kasha on Reish Lakish from the story in Bnei Brak, are you going to switch that too? The Gemara says, well, no. We'll have to see tomorrow why. So we're switching a bunch of things, but we're not going to switch that one.